So if you're moving to the Middle Georgia area, chances are you're going to be living in Warner Robins, Bonaire, Kathleen, or Perry. And if so, chances are you're probably going to want a place of your own. So the next question is, do you want to buy a new construction home or do you want to buy a resale home from a private owner? Well, in this video, we're going to go over the pros and the cons of buying a new construction and the pros and cons of buying a resale house. And at the end, we're going to go over some of the most common questions that I get asked about buying houses in the Middle Georgia area. So let's get started. Hey guys, I'm Chris, your real estate problem solver. I'm a real estate agent and an investor in the Middle Georgia area. I cover Warner Robins, Bonaire, Kathleen, Perry, and Hawkinsville, and some of the surrounding outside areas too. But the one question that I do have a lot of people asking is, what's the difference between a new construction home and a resale house? Is buying a new construction home worth it? Or if I buy a resale house, are there any hidden costs? Well, in this video, let's get started on the resale houses and the pros and cons of buying a resale house from a homeowner. Well, to start with, a resale house is actually anything from new construction all the way to 50 years old. All resale means is that you're not buying the house from the builder that built the house. So if a homeowner bought a house last year as a new construction, and for example, since this is a military area and we are close to Robins Air Force Base, a lot of military people get PCS'd on a short notice. And we've had a couple military members from Robins get PCS'd out within a year of buying their new construction home. So if you buy that house from them, even though it's 1 year old, it's still considered a resale. So you can still get a resale even if it's only 1 year old. So what are some of the pros of buying a resale house? Well, to start with, normally when you buy a resale house, the neighborhood has already been established. The trees have all grown up. You don't have these tiny little twigs out there. You're waiting 50 years to grow up and get a little bit of shade. So you can actually drive the neighborhood and see what kind of people are already there, so you can decide whether or not that's an area that resonates with your personality. Also, a resale house is going to have somebody that's already lived there. They've already ironed out the bugs, and I don't mean roaches. I just mean that if there's any issues or structural problems with the house, they've already made themselves aware of it and either fixed it or they're going to have to disclose it to you. For example, houses that are built on the side of a hill sometimes have water issues building up on the side of the house that's closest to the hill where water might get retained. So they may have put in an aftermarket French drain to get the water to shed around the house to make sure that it doesn't build up and cause problems with the foundation. Another issue that might come up is if there are any electrical defects that were in the house, the current owner would have run into that problem. They would have paid to get it fixed right, and now you don't have to worry about it. And of course, a resale house has already been established, so depending on how old the house is that you're wanting to buy, it could have already developed its own character, its own style, because the style of houses built in the 60s is going to be different than the ones built in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and so on. The different building materials, the different styles, the different craftsmanship. And between you and me, the houses that were built 30, 40, 50 years ago were built by building materials that were stronger and more durable than some of the stuff that we have today. For example, a lot of 60s and 70s houses have the original 1.25" oak hardwood 2-inch tongue and groove flooring. Now that stuff is just about indestructible. As long as you take a sander and refinish it and put another coat of polyurethane across it, that stuff will last forever and it's easy to keep clean. As opposed to an LVP that is really popular right now. Now LVP is durable and it lasts a long time, but it's not something that you can continue to fix and keep going. Once LVP wears out, you're going to have to take up the whole floor and lay out new LVP. And then one last pro to buying a resale house is, depending on the neighborhood that you're in and the age of the house, you could possibly get a whole lot more house for your dollar. Where a new construction house might be $300,000 for a 1,900 square foot home, you might be able to get a 2,500 square foot house for the same price and still just as nice. So what are some of the cons about buying a resale house? Depending on how far back you go and how old of a house that you're looking at, you could end up inheriting a little bit of maintenance and some repairs. If you, for example, buy a Victorian house, something that was built in the 1890s or early 1900s, they're going to be using a lot of terracotta pipes. Well, terracotta, it gets brittle over time and it breaks, but chances are the house that you're looking at probably has already been upgraded to PVC or PEX plumbing. Or another example is the cotton coated wiring. Now, of course, a lot of the really older houses have cotton wiring or aluminum wiring, and there's nothing wrong with aluminum, but the cotton wiring does have a tendency to build up heat. And if the house hasn't been upgraded to a new wiring system, you may end up having to do that later on after you buy the house. And then, of course, another con about a resale house, depending on how old the house is that you buy, it may not be very well insulated. A lot of historical houses in the Macon, Warner Robins area have been completely rehabbed, and the rehabber went in with spray foam or upgraded cotton blown insulation in the attic. Or the new product that came out that I've got in my personal house is what they call a sticky fiberglass. They blow it in just like spray foam, but it's a fiberglass insulation just like the Pink Panther stuff, and it doesn't settle down in the wall like the old stuff does. This stuff actually stays where you put it for a long time. So be careful if you buy a resale house. Make sure that you get the inspector to look over the insulation and make sure the insulation is really good and updated, or make sure that it's able to be updated. But even if it's a resale house, chances are if you buy a house that's less than 20 years old, there's a good chance you're probably not going to have any real issues, and it's going to be just as maintenance free as a new construction home. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's get into the pros and cons of a new construction house. Now, of course, the pros of a new construction house is it's going to be a little bit more customized. It's definitely going to be more modern because they just built it. And with that said, typically you guys out there all want the latest and greatest. So a new construction house is probably going to be more appealing to you because it's new. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, decide they just seem to have a better feeling about a house if nobody else has lived there, which I can kind of understand. But at the same time, the builders also know that too, and you're going to be paying top dollar for it. Now, of course, with a new construction home, there's going to probably be a little bit less maintenance and a little less worry because it is new construction. They just finished building it. So there's no building materials that have worn out. It hasn't had time to settle. It hasn't had time to have any real issues. And a lot of the builders around here, these getting into the later season, are putting out a lot of good incentives to buy new construction homes. And with that, they are typically going to give you some kind of a 1-year warranty. And if your agent is really good at negotiating, then you could possibly get them to agree to a 2 or 3 year warranty. That means if anything goes wrong with the house, you can go back to the builder and he'll make it right. And also, with that said, new construction homes, another pro is the builders have the power to put in a little bit more incentives to help you buy that house. They work partnerships with lending companies that can hopefully get you a better interest rate while they're building the house. If you catch them in time, you can possibly get them to customize the house a little bit better for you, like ceiling fans in the bedrooms, or a fenced-in backyard, or possibly extending the master bedroom closets. So it's a little bit more customized to you. Now, keep in mind, this depends on how soon you put the house under contract. If it's already finished, then that's kind of a moot point. But we do have another video on builders incentives right here that you can check out, and we'll go over all the builders incentives of the new construction homes. Okay, so let's get into the cons of a new construction house. Well, we already mentioned the first one, which is the higher price. Builders know that American culture is always wanting the latest and greatest. So since they have the newest house, they're going to put a premium price on it, and if you want their house, you're going to pay for it. Now, again, there are some incentives that you can negotiate to kind of get that price a little bit better or get more for your money. Now, one big con that a lot of people ran into during COVID, and they're still trying to do it now, is Under the contract of purchasing a new construction home, sometimes the builder will put in a clause that if the building materials goes up in price a certain amount, or if the market increases by a certain amount, then they have the right to adjust the price of the house without the buyer's permission, and they're still under contract. And if they decide to cancel the contract, then they could end up losing their deposit. So that's a big con that a lot of people are worried about. So make sure to negotiate that out of the contract if possible. Another con to buying a new construction home is if the house isn't already finished yet, then you do run the chance of having timeline problems. If it's not finished, there's always weather, there's always acts of God, there's always some kind of an issue that's going to delay finishing the house. So you could get put back a little bit longer on your move-in dates versus a resale home, which is already having somebody live in it. So all they have to do is move out and you move in, simple and easy. And then a few minutes ago, I mentioned the sticks in the yard. Well, that's another con of the new construction homes. New construction, 99% of the time, are in new developments that have never seen a house before. If you want to see some examples of it, we've got a video right here of new construction homes in Perry that you can check out, where two of the new construction communities are being built up inside of a pecan orchard. Yes, I said pecan, that's how we say it down here. But with that said, most of the landscape has not really been established yet. So your shade tree is only 4 foot tall, your gardenias are only 2 foot tall, and they're not putting out enough blooms to really get that potent smell that everybody loves about gardenias. So if you want a landscape that's already established and all you have to do is maintain it, you might want to look at a resale home instead. And then the last con about a new construction home is you're going to be one of the first few people that have moved into that neighborhood, or you could be one of the last few. Either way, the majority of the neighborhood has been there for less than a year or less than 2 years, so you don't really know your neighbors. The community hasn't really gotten established yet, so you don't really know what you're going to end up with when it comes to culture and community of that neighborhood, as opposed to a resale house where you can already drive the neighborhood, you can see the landscape of the other houses, you can see what kind of cars they drive, the landscaping, the trash in the yard. You can tell whether or not that neighborhood is someplace that you want to be. So keep that in mind when you go to look at a new construction home and putting in an offer. So what are some of the common questions that I get asked about new construction and resale homes? Well, one question is about resale homes. What are some of the hidden costs pertaining to buying a house that was previously owned by another private owner? Well, that really depends, because some of the hidden costs aren't really hidden. You just need to be made aware of it before you buy the house, and that's why you're going to order a home inspection. For example, if the roof is more than 10 years old, then you may end up having to put a new roof on before you sell the house yourself. Air conditioning is the same way. If the previous owners took care of it, they can last up to 20 or 30 years. But depending on how well you take care of it, it may be worn out already, or it may just be close to needing to be replaced anyway at the time that you buy the house. So again, all this pretty much falls into the home inspection and the report that they give you, and reading over it and making sure that you know everything about the house that you're buying before you sign on the dotted line. Another common question is, are new construction homes really worth it? Now, this is really more of a personal preference thing. If you've already owned a house before, then you're selling a resale house from wherever you're coming from to get to the Middle Georgia area. So if you're moving to one of Robbins or Kathleen or Bonaire, chances are you're probably going to be just fine buying a resale house as opposed to a new construction. Now, if you're downsizing, then you may have a house that you've sold that was an acre or 2 acres and 2,500 square feet, and you're wanting to get down to something that's maybe a 1/4 acre, 1 story, and less than 2,000 square feet to make it simple on your life. And there are plenty of new construction homes in this area, especially around Kathleen and Bonaire, that will definitely fit that bill. So that question of whether or not a new construction is worth it really is a personal preference. Now, another question I've been asked is, if I buy a resale house, Would it be worth it for me to upgrade the wiring or upgrade the insulation or do any upgrades to the house? Well, there again, it depends on what you buy the house for. If you spend $350,000 on a new construction home and there's another house around the corner that's being sold by a private owner for $300,000 and all you have to do is upgrade the insulation, then upgrading the insulation only costs maybe $1,000, $2,000 depending on what you do. Wouldn't it be worth the money savings and the monthly bills on your mortgage to go ahead and buy a cheaper house for a little bit less money and put some of your own money into that house and make it exactly what you want? Now, an interesting question that I got asked a couple weeks ago that I had to do a little bit of research on was, do new construction homes appreciate faster than resale homes? Well, that's kind of a trick, and it's an investor's trick that I know about, so don't tell everybody. But if you buy a new construction home in the early stages of the community development, that development will have a tendency to go up in price from the start to the finish of the development. If you buy one of the first 20 houses in a housing development, then by the time they get to the back and they finish the last few houses, there is a good chance that the house could go up $20, $30, $50,000. It really depends on the location. It depends on the type of house and how popular that model is. Now, since I'm also an investor, I'm usually going to go for the older houses and fix them up myself because, well, I can get the house fixed up and modernized just like a new construction home for the same price or less than what the builders are charging. So, but that's just me. If you have any questions, reach out to me. My information is in the description below, and I'll see you when you get to Warner Robins.